Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and I'm going to make this one short because I'm still not up to par with my voice and everything, and yeah, the shorter the better on this one. But I'm sure you've been watching all the different things that have been going on, and from the hearing yesterday to the hearing that Barr didn't show up to today, and the chicken, and oh, it's just been crazy. I mean, they really have gone over the edge. I just can't imagine that these are grown-up people that are supposed to be running our country. But anyway, about this, I saw this clip from Fox Business, and sometimes, honestly, Fox Business has better clips than the regular Fox News. But this one right here was from Kennedy's show. I'm not so thrilled with her as an interviewer, but it had Sean Spicer on it, and I thought he did a good job. But before we get to that, I want to play this little clip here of Barr making a summary, and I really liked what he had to say here. I would have included a lot more things in that video from yesterday, but it was just getting so long, and I needed to just wind it up. So there were a lot more things that he said that I thought were gems. It'd be interesting to go through and just pick out his, statements that he made. But I did want to share this one with you because I think this puts everything in a good perspective.
How did we get to the point here where the evidence is now that the president was falsely accused of colluding with the Russians and accused of being treasonous and accused of being a Russian agent, and the evidence now is that was without a basis. And 2 years of his administration have been dominated by the allegations that have now been proven false. And, to listen to some of the rhetoric, you would think that the Mueller report had found the opposite.
And then there's this clip with Graham, and pretty much Graham clarifies it all, just with the questions he asked. They were very simple, straightforward, and I thought he did a good job with them. And Barr, of course, answered like we expected. So I'm going to play this for you, too.
Do you expect to change your mind about the bottom line conclusions of the Mueller report?
No.
Do you know Bob Mueller?
Yes.
Do you trust him?
Yes.
How long have you known him?
30 years, roughly.
You think he had the time he needed?
Yes.
You think he had the money he needed?
Yes.
You think he had the resources he needed?
Yes.
You think he did a thorough job?
Yes.
So that pretty much puts it in perspective. And that should be the baseline that we're looking at, all of us, because those are the essential questions. Mueller had everything he needed to do the job. And that right there indicates that he was not obstructed from doing what he was supposed to do. He did the investigation. So, that kind of takes the wind out of the sails when you're talking about obstruction of justice charges. I mean, that's just crazy. And that, of course, is what the Democrats right now are focusing on. Now, Sean Spicer talks about the very same thing, how we've lost sight of what the original thing was. And this is how the Democrats are trying to change the narrative that we're seeing, because it didn't work. There was no collusion. So they can't keep focusing on that. They're desperate to find something else. And I personally think that Mueller's people put together that second volume, which was the part about the obstruction. I think they put that together on purpose the way they did, because the way it's structured, the way the sentences read and everything, it basically says, well, we think maybe he's guilty of this, and here's the reason why. But then it goes through, and if you read the whole thing, you see that that's purely one possibility, and that there are many other possibilities as to why that's not true. And so it really, if you read the whole thing all together, you understand why they could not charge him with obstruction, because nothing is clear-cut, and they had no way to build a case for it. And Barr is right when he was talking about that. There's just no way he could have built a case. So I want to play this little clip here of Sean Spicer talking about it. And he really gets to the heart of things with this.
His baby. Was there anything here that was problematic for you?
No, not really. I think he was calm, cool, and collective. He really walked through the legal reaction to this, if you will. In other words, he broke down in each question why the rhetoric didn't make sense from a legal basis, and that's what this was. And I think we've lost perspective as to what this was about. a special counsel was appointed by the Department of Justice to look into this matter. That special counsel reports to the Attorney General during Attorney General Sessions' tenure, reported to the Deputy Attorney General. But this report was always intended for the Attorney General. The Attorney General went a big step further by not only releasing it to Congress, but to the American people. And I think that what he did today was explain the process, explain the conclusions. And I think the other thing that's interesting is, and you alluded to this, is that we've lost focus on the fact that none of the Democrats were actually in no way contesting the underlying fact that there was no collusion. In fact, to hear the Democrats today, collusion, they kept saying, collusion's not even a legal term. Why are we talking about it? And I'm thinking to myself, wait a second, I heard that for about 7 months nonstop, and now suddenly the Democrats have pivoted to, well, it's never been about collusion. And I think they've lost focus on what they're actually fighting for, and now talking about a bunch of process questions. Why did you write a 4-page memo the way you did? Were you concerned that this reaction, as opposed to...
Okay, let me ask you about...
So you can see that we really need to bring people back to the original reason that the whole Mueller investigation was put together, and that was to ensure that our president was not working for a foreign power. And that's what they said. They went through, they found out that no, he was not. He was innocent of that charge. He did not collude, he did not conspire with Russia in any way to affect the election. Okay? So that's what we have to focus on, because that was what Mueller was tasked with. And when we get away from that, that's what the Democrats are trying to do now. They're trying to spin the narrative because the result of the Mueller report did not fit what they wanted to have happen. And that's what Spicer was saying. You know, they didn't get what they wanted, so they're trying to find something else to nail Trump with. Listen to this question that Kennedy asks, and then how Spicer responds to it.
Okay, let me ask you about that, because there were a lot of questions about that summary, which I guess really isn't a summary, depending on who you ask. And the Attorney General said this was such a pressing matter because of the public interest in the case and for the amount of time that it had gone on, and the fact that it centered around the president and took so much energy from his administration. Therefore, he felt obligated to put something out. Do you think in hindsight that he shouldn't have released that 4-page document to members of Congress and to the public?
No, I think he did the right thing, and here's why. He made it very clear that they expected to get a redacted version from the special counsel that they would have been able to turn around much quicker. That wasn't the case. And so what the Attorney General said today is, much like you would release a verdict summary right after a trial, and then the transcript of that trial comes out days later, he was trying to make sure that the American people in Congress understood the bottom line. And again, getting back to what I said a moment ago, the bottom line was always, was there collusion with the Russians or any other entity that sought to undermine the integrity of our elections? And the Attorney General's summary, or whatever we're calling it now, came out and made it clear that no, there wasn't. And that was what the main thrust of the special counsel's investigation was about. And here's the further point. Again, this is why this is such a silly conversation that the Democrats were having today, which is within days after that summary, the entire 400-plus page report came out. Meaning, if you didn't agree with the summary, well, now you've got it all out there in a searchable way that you can look up, read it yourself.
If I were answering your question, I think I would have said he was damned either way. I mean, if Barr would have received the Mueller report and not put anything out, the Democrats would have been saying, obstruction, oh, he's covering up, cover up, oh no, he's keeping it from us. And so he put something out just to give the baseline, and I liked what he had to say there about if you were summarizing a court case. Well, the bottom line is, what was the verdict? Was the person guilty or not guilty? And so that's basically what he did. He said, okay, so Trump is not guilty. So then they turn around and they make a big thing about it. So it wouldn't have mattered if Barr would have kept the report and waited until it was completely redacted and everything he had to do for it before he put it out. They were still going to complain. And we all know what happened with the way he did handle it, that he put this out, this 4-page summary of the verdict, and then later on he gave the entire report. So why are they complaining about this? He was not required to give that report out, period. So the fact that he did opens the door to say, look at how transparent he was being. He was being much more transparent than he needed to be according to the law. And that's something that we have to remember too, because they are trying to smear Barr. And if you remember the wrap-up smear, if you've not seen that video, you need to watch it, because Nancy Pelosi goes through how to do the wrap-up smear. Now, she was accusing Republicans of doing it, but of course, we know that the Democrats are very good at psychological projection, and that means they are really good at accusing other people of what they themselves are doing. And if you haven't seen those two videos, you really need to watch them, because they give you an insight into this particular methodology that they're doing. I also want to point out another video of mine that I did quite a while back, actually, but it's still very pertinent. Back when Trump was being inaugurated, Media Matters, which is run by David Brock, held a little meeting for some very select people, and they had this presentation that was given out to them. Well, a copy of it got leaked. And yes, we do know what's in that, and I will put the link down below on it. But if you want to know what the plan was from the time, I mean, this took place like the same time Trump was being inaugurated, the same days, right in through there. And they were planning this. They have an entire plan on how to use social media and basically bullying in order to stop anyone who was going to side with Trump. I'm serious. That was their plan. And that's why we see all this and the big grandstands they're making right now, because they're using them in the media. And it's part of the whole wrap-up smear, which involves the press. That's a very important factor in it, that they have to have a complicit press. And when the press prints something, they make something up, the press prints it, then they turn around and point at the press and say, look, see, it must be true. And that's how it's been working. I was reading an article today that was saying that Vladimir Putin personally was behind all the hacking of the DNC and everything. And yet the source was one person. One person was what they were giving as their valid source. Well, you know what? If you only have it from one person, and it was an unnamed source, which I am always skeptical of, then I would rethink it, because if you can't find a validation somewhere else, chances are very likely that, it might not be true. And that's how I look at a lot of sources when I read things. I try to find articles that corroborate it, but you have to be very careful when you're doing that, because sometimes smaller websites, blogs and things like that, will use the exact same article. So there's only one article, but it's being put on different sites, but it's the same article. And so there's only one source article. Be very careful about that kind of thing, because if you can't find it from various sources that are a little bit bigger, and it's not like word for word the same thing, then chances are very good that that may not be a legitimate source. So keep that in mind. And that was what struck me. And it was a Politico article. And, I was surprised that Politico would do that, but not really, That's kind of how they're working these days. So anyway, I wanted to bring all this to you, and I wanted to show you this clip. You can watch the entire clip for yourself, but I wanted to point out those things because I think we need to remember in all of this, as crazy as things are getting, and folks, they're going to get crazier. They really are, because as more and more things come out, it's going to get even worse. And remember, we still have to see the IG report on the FISA abuse. That's going to be huge. And then when we see the D-class documents, that's going to support it. And we already know the snowball can't be stopped at this point. It's crashing down on us. So we're going to see it all start happening. And I know for a lot of us, we're like, finally. But it's something that we also need to take seriously, because when all of this comes out, there will be no denying what happened. And that's going to be something that I think we all need to take soberly. And while we want justice to be done, it's going to change our world. Take some time and think it through, to think about what lies ahead after all of this is said and done, and all of this stuff comes out, because we can never go back to the way we were. And the way our country is going to go forward is by people who think about how we need to do that and what protections need to be in place so that this can never happen again. So that's what I've got on this one. Remember, the links will be down below. I'm working on getting my blog transferred over to my website so I don't have to kind of do my blog over on my Patreon account, because I want to try to do it more under my own control, just in case, because recently Patreon has not treated some conservatives very nicely. So I want to be very cognizant of it, what's going on with Patreon. Also, I'd rather have things on my own website. Then I can decide what goes up and what doesn't. And I also wanted to remind you about playlists, because I put all of these videos from 1 week into a playlist. And sometimes throughout the week, people are busy, they're doing different things. Sometimes you get sick and you don't watch things like you normally do. And then on the weekend, maybe you get a chance to catch up. And so that's why I put them in a playlist. You can actually go to the playlist and click play all, and it'll play the entire list for you. So it just goes one to the other to the other. So like if you're driving or something like that, it's a really good way to get a lot of content without the hassle of changing to a new video or something. Each week I put them in a separate playlist. So I wanted to remind you of that, because the weekend's coming up, and I don't know if you got a chance to see all the videos I've been doing during the week. And if you haven't, this way you'll get a chance to. So I want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.